I'm not really even entirely sure how to start talking about this, except for the fact that I find this completely ridiculous. I'm, of course, referring to the fact that there is a Florida student currently being charged with multiple felonies because of a harmless science experiment that she happened to do in the wrong place. Kiera Wilmot is a 16-year-old student in Bartow, Florida, and apparently she made the overwhelmingly horrible mistake, and obviously with serious dangerous consequences, of mixing toilet bowl cleaner and aluminum foil on her school grounds. Not in a classroom, though, but without the supervision of a teacher. This to me seems more like a detention offense. Okay, you didn't experiment on school grounds without the teacher's, permission. Okay, that's more like a detention after school offense, or maybe an in-school suspension offense, or something along those lines. But these very reasonable people decided that this schoolgirl, who they have admitted freely intended to harm nobody, and also admitted freely these are two perfectly legal substances that happen to make harmless smoke. In their reasonability and their infinite wisdom, that so many schools are displaying in the 21st century today, they decided not only to expel her, but to charge her with multiple felonies. Yes, multiple felonies for this. And they are pushing to have her being tried as an adult. She's 16. I don't even know where to begin in commenting about just how completely ridiculous this is. I could start off with the fact that the experiment was completely harmless. No way conceivable within reason that anybody could get hurt doing it, number one. Number two, the fact that the student has no history of trouble whatsoever and seemed to be exemplary. And even the people at the school admit that there is no harm intended in this experiment. And yet, the concept of a victimless crime, and I use the word crime here loosely, seems to elude them, because their real issue they're pushing is the fact that we have to teach kids that there are consequences to their actions. I want to know what lesson they think anybody is going to be taking away from the fact that this little science experiment that was completely legal and completely harmless, that just happened to be in the wrong place, is somehow worth multiple felonies and expulsion from school. I mean, is the lesson supposed to be that kids shouldn't be attempting science experiments? I mean, this girl obviously did it out of the thirst for knowledge. Which, okay, I get it, that there are some experiments you shouldn't try without supervision. There are some experiments that are dangerous and you should do in the right hands. This was not one of them. Okay, I don't know what number I'm on, but this is not one of them. And on top of that, what is with this constant obsession that schools have now with calling the cops for everything that goes wrong? I cannot tell you how every week I see another news story about a 5-year-old taken out of school in handcuffs, or this 8-year-old who's arrested. Like, when did it get to the point that these school officials cannot handle their own students, to the point that they have to burden our already very overburdened police forces around this country by bringing them to schools for these minor piddling matters that could be settled with common sense? Especially something like this, because there was no bullying, there was no fight, there was nothing that could have been considered in the realm of pure illegality. Okay, and then the excuses that they come back with is that somehow this is tied to the idea that students need to be responsible for their consequences because in the age we live in, where these experiments could lead to explosions and school bombings. I don't know what to do except give myself a facepalm on that. Because there is no explosives involved in this at all. No conceivable way. And yet they're making it about that. I don't know what it is with this country right now where we are afraid of everything. We see guns and we see bombs in our soup. Because of a few unfortunate incidents that happen, everybody's afraid of everything. And it's gotten ridiculous. It gets to the point when you're charging 16-year-old girls with crimes just because you're hoping that somehow that's going to make your school a little safer, which it's not, by the way. If anything, this is just attracting all tons of negative attention to the school. And on top of that, do people understand the concept of being charged with a felony or multiple felonies in this case? I mean, I don't think people really realize what that means. Because in the United States, in the 21st century, people who are charged with a felony never escape that label. Okay, maybe 1 out of 20 get beyond the label, but no, they really don't. Because nobody bothers to really investigate why somebody has a felony. It's people, especially with the way the job market is, people, they see that on your resume, they immediately, you have no shot at getting a job. And you know the old saying that if you have no shot of actually getting a legitimate job, what do you do but turn to a life of crime? Okay, and you are labeled for the entire rest of your life. Especially now, considering how much records are permanent and how you cannot escape it. So, you want to not only expel this girl from her school, a girl who was an exemplary student, but you want to label her with multiple felonies that will follow her entire life for her doing absolutely nothing wrong. Okay, maybe the fact that it was in the wrong place was slightly wrong. Is that literally worth ruining somebody's entire life? This should be common sense. This should be a very obvious situation. She was a 16-year-old student who was a little too curious and made a minor mess up. Okay, what happened to this country? When did the people who have authority positions in schools get to this point that they literally cannot use their common sense? And when did the police have so little to do that they could actually take this seriously? And what prosecutor out there would take this seriously? This is not only an example of incredibly just askew priorities, it's, in my opinion, and this is only my opinion, this is sheer stupidity. Like, I don't see the upside to this at all. Okay, and this school-to-prison pipeline is something that really needs to stop, because it is getting to the point when it's more dangerous to send your kid to public school than it is to just keep them home and homeschool them. Okay, I mean, I know that if I had a kid right now, I would not be sending them to public school in this environment, and I know many people who feel the same way, and it doesn't have anything to do with, in my case, with the fear of the schools being shot at or bombed, even though that is a very persistent and very understandable fear that a lot of parents have. But in my case, I'd be more afraid of the day-to-day fact that their rights get trampled on left and right, where these schools are in constant lockdown, where with all these zero-tolerance policies for just minor, stupid things. And a zero-tolerance policy is never a good idea, because there's always exceptions to every rule, always. There's just so much wrong with the situation, and it is just so unfortunate. And there is a petition going on right now to try to get these charges against this poor girl dropped, because people out there with common sense realize that this schoolgirl should not have to face felonies for conducting a harmless science experiment that did nobody any harm. Okay, so if you're seeing this video in a relevant time frame and the petition's still going to be below, please sign this petition, because no 16-year-old curious girl deserves to have something this stupid follow her their entire life. And there's also an article below as well. I don't really know what to say. I just felt I had to say something about this, because this just it baffles me. It really baffles me what this country and this world right now is coming to, when this many people in authority positions don't have the sheer common sense to realize just how stupid and how much of a waste of time and just how unjust this is. Especially when everybody has admitted they know there was no malicious intent. But they're doing it because of, I'm not sure if they're doing it just to make it seem like they're justified for expelling her, or if they're just doing it because they literally somehow think this is going to make the world safer. It's obviously not. Okay, and we really need to re-examine ourselves as a country and just as a culture if this type of thing, along with the dozens and dozens of other cases where 5-year-olds are being dragged out of schools in handcuffs, all these situations when you want to charge kids as adults, because what was the whole point of having juvenile crimes and adult crimes with the cutoff age at either 18 or 21, depending on your state, if you're just going to constantly trial kids as adults anyway? It's really out of nothing except the fact that parents get emotionally charged and then demand justice, and so they figure that's justice. Okay, there are other countries in the world right now where kids are held fully responsible for their actions, and in some countries when that happens, there was a kid who got stoned recently because of it. Are we really going to be heading down that path where kids, where you know, like, why would anybody want to be a kid in this country right now, where you're when the mistakes that you make as a kid, the innocent mistakes you make as a kid, are going to follow you for the entire rest of your life. That's not very much incentive to want to be a kid in this country, and that's not incentives for people to want to have kids in this country right now. And this is something that really needs to be fought against, and this is something that really, really needs to be opposed. So again, please sign this petition so that this poor girl will not suffer for this little mistake for her entire life. Thank you.